Melochim Perek Tes Halacha Zayin. Ein ben Noach chayav al eishes chaveroi ad sheyover leo kedarko. Ben Noach is not liable for having committed adultery with his friend's wife until he lives with her in the normal fashion. Now let's go to the Peirush. Acha shenivolo lebalo. Only after she has been, because she has lived with her husband, because the living with her husband causes her to be a wife. And therefore, here explains how can Ben Noach be liable for his Eishes Chaveroi or for a wife or the wife of Yisrael. Alma was if she was engaged, or she knows the chuppah of the nivolo, or she went into the chuppah and she was not did not have a relationship with her husband. En chayov and oleho. By a goy, there's no liability, because she's not married yet. Shenema, Hashem said to Avimelech, regarding Sarah, v'hu b'ulas baal. That the reason Sarah is forbidden to him is because Avram already had a relationship with her. But if he was a Ben Noach before he had a relationship with her, he is not liable for death penalty. In other words, he writes, for Matan Torah, the Rambam writes, a person would meet a woman in the street, and if they wanted to, they would have consensual, what we call consensual relationship. And then he would take her to this house and have a relationship without any witnesses, and it's his wife, because through this relationship, she's his wife. The Machon Nesher writes that's simple, and brought down in many places. The goy that lives with a woman for the purpose of marriage, not promiscuity, she's his wife. And somebody else who lives with her is liable for a death penalty, as the Rambam says here. And the Torah was given to Yisrael Peirush and Kedushin. That's how the Kedushin comes, right? The Machon Nesher says when the Torah was given, so Yisrael were obligated to marry only with betrothal, with Kedushin, and therefore she becomes married to be forbidden to the whole world. Therefore he continues, when do I say, when is this stated, that a goy is liable on a relationship if he had a relationship with her in a normal fashion? When we're discussing only non-Jews. Israelis, but a goy has a relationship with a female Jewess, whether he does it in the normal fashion or any other fashion, he's liable, because we give him then the punishment which accords with the laws of Yisrael. When he has a relationship with a Jewess who is unmarried, he's not killed. We can find in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, chapter 12, Halacha Tes, a goy who has a relationship with the Israelis, who is a married woman, he's killed. And an unmarried woman, he's not killed, whether he had a normal relationship or an unnatural relationship, like the forbiddenness by Yisrael, which is both naturally so or unnaturally so. If she was 12 years old, that she's beginning to show that she's maturing, and for 6 months she has the category of being a nara, a maiden, whereas she was engaged, and if she had a relationship with the Yisrael willingly, they would both be liable for the death penalty by stoning. And a goy that has a relationship with her, Yisrael, therefore would have the death penalty that's not usual for a non-Jew of stoning, even though usually, according to the Rambam, the goy is killed with a sword. Here, it's only because of the forbiddenness of our royals of Yisrael, because by goy there's no ein erison. Therefore, we accord him with the laws of a Jew, and he has to be stoned. If he had a relationship with her after they went into the chuppah, and she did not have a relationship with her husband, then the law would be that he would be choked like a Jew. That by Israel, a maiden woman that went into chuppah, even though she's betrothed, even though she didn't have a relationship with her husband. If she committed adultery, she receives the death penalty of choking, because she's considered a married woman even though the act has not been consummated by her husband. And sins by a ben noach, the going into the chuppah, if he came on a betrothed woman and she did not have a relationship, she is liable to the death penalty like a Jew, not sword, because she's a married woman, a Jewish married woman. But if you had a relationship with her after she already had a relationship with her husband, then the law goes into effect that if he had lived with a wife of a goy, he would be liable to the death penalty of a Yahoreg with a sword, which is according to the Rambam, the normal death of a goy. As the Mishnah cites Sanhedrin 58b, to the member of Abelazar, Rabba explains that Ben Noach, who has a relationship with his wife of his friend in unnatural fashion, is not liable. The Brisa learns from Vayikra 18 verse 6, any person who should to the relationship of his flesh should not come close to reveal a hidden portions. It says twice ish. It tells that a goy is forbidden on the royas just like a Yisrael. More questions by a goy, we learn it from Bereshis, from Eitzav Hashem Lekim Odom Leimer, and this is learned that God would command man saying at Skile Aroyas. So we see that there were forbidden relationships to a Ben Noach. We learned this in Sanhedrin 56b, and he answers that Leimer teaches us the forbiddenness of a Ben Noach. Beishas Ish is one of those that the Ben Noach is forbidden, just like by a Jew. And it says at the end, Ben Noach, if he has a relationship with a forbiddenness of a Jew, he then is punished like a Jew would be punished. The Gemara explains, what does Rabbi Yochanan say to a woman who's betrothed? That by Ben Noach, there's no conflict of betrothal that should forbid her as a wife, and therefore the only applicable law is that of Yisrael, and therefore he's stoned. The Gemara questions, why is it saying the Brisa Ben Noach, who has a relationship with the wife of Yisrael, is given death with a sword like a Ben Noach? We learned in the Brisa, if he had a relationship with a betrothed maiden, he is stoned, and if he had a relationship with a married woman, Jewish woman, he is choked. So we see even by a Jewish woman there is a concept of choking at times. So Yitzchak, and the Eishes Ish that's mentioned that's choking is when she did not can consummate the marriage with her husband. They haven't lived together. That there, the Eishes by a Ben Noach would not be considered an Eishes Ish, a wife. But by a Jew it is, and therefore we have to give him the death penalty that would accord a Jew if he did such an action. Therefore, he receives choking like a Yisrael. Hanina learned Ulazbaum that they have the concept of having a relationship when he goes into the chuppah, and v'lo nivalo, but not having a consummated marriage, they don't have that situation. And Rashi explains that by goyim there is a concept of having a husband. It says in Bereshis 20, verse 3, and that by Sarah she is related, and not that she's a wife of a person. This is a sign that when Hashem said to Avimelech, you are dying, and she's Bula's Baal, it's because of Ben Noach, because of the relationship, it's because of Kedushin, and not because of Kedushin and Chuppah. So, Nimtza, thus we find that on every Issa ever Yisrael that is not found by a Goy, just similar to an engaged maiden, or somebody who was married legally with chuppah, but they didn't have a relationship, and by a goy would not be his wife. If the goy has a relationship with her, he is judged according to the rules of Yisrael and the penalties of Yisrael. But if he lived with an Ashes Yisrael after she had a relationship with her husband, then is he similar to just like living with a Ben Noach's wife, and then he would receive death by sword. As the Rambam's opinion is that that's the death of a Ben Noach. I guess the Mishnah explains, a guy who came and had a relationship with a Jewish daughter, whether it's naturally so or unnaturally so, he's liable. He learned this from the Ben Noach. By Noach, that's forbidden. By Yisrael, we learn from Ish. He's liable just like Yisrael would be liable. And he infers this from the language of Rava, in Sanhedrin 58b. A Ben Noach who had a relationship with his friend's wife, not in the normal fashion, then he's not liable. And he doesn't say on a forbiddenness, would mean that so would be the rule even by a wife of a Yisrael, only if he raped her normally so. Therefore, the Rambam codifies the Halacha. If he has a relationship with a Jewish woman who's married, even not in the normal fashion, he's liable, because Yisrael would be liable for consorting with the wife of another Jew, even if it's not the normal fashion. Okay, as a mission question, so the Gemara questioned, what do I need to tell us from Ish? The forbidden is by Ben Noach, and he answered, regarding the betrothed maiden, or a woman who went into the chuppah and didn't have a relationship with her husband, why didn't they answer that it will say from the Pasuk Lamer, Bnei Noach are forbidden in all situations, that a Jew is forbidden only if he did it naturally. I mean, Ish we learn that even if it's done in an unnatural fashion, it's also liable. And he answers that they felt it was a greater halacha to tell us that even something that has no connection whatever to a goy, such as a betrothal, or where the man hasn't lived with a wife yet, that's a greater thought to tell us that they're forbidden than to tell us when it's not a natural way that he is liable anyway. The Rizvaz cites that the Rambam inferred that Ben Noach, who had a relationship with a forbiddenness, woman is not liable when he does it in an unnatural fashion. From what Rava says, Ben Noach, who had a relationship with the wife of his friend, not in a normal way, is not liable. Why? Because it says he shall attach himself, and when one has a relationship that's not natural, that's not called not attaching themselves. But if he lived with a Jewish wife, unnaturally he's liable, because by a Jewish wife there's a concept that she's the wife of the husband, even if he lives with her in an unnatural fashion. Kesef Mishnah continues, according to his opinion, that every forbiddenness that a Ben Noach is liable on an unnatural fashion, except for the wife of his friend, is found that would apply to his mother and the wife of his father, and by his sister from the mother, that he says in Halacha Hey that these are forbidden to Ben Noach. He'll be liable even if he did it unnaturally so. He explains that if the Gemara didn't say that a Ben Noach who had a relationship with forbiddenness in a fashion which was not natural is not liable, because that's only regarding the wife of his friend. That's only limited to that, but the other forbidden relationships, he would be liable even if he did it unnaturally so. And the reason is found in Sanhedrin 58a. It says he shall attach himself to his wife, and not the wife of his friend, and attach himself, and not means the normal way, and not in an unnatural fashion. But it is a special forbiddenness by Ben Noach, who has a relationship with his friend's wife in an unnatural fashion, and he's not liable because he is not attached to her, because she does not benefit from an unnatural relationship. And we learn from the fact that he has to be attached, only that which is forbidden by the wife of his friend is when it's a relationship which is normal. But the other relationships that have no connection to the idea of attachment, and therefore Ben Noach will be liable even if he lived with another, with those such as his father's wife or his sister, even if it's in an unnatural fashion. In Sanhedrin 58a, we learned, therefore a man leaves his father and mother and attaches himself to his wife. We learn from that his father, and not his father's wife. And the father's wife is forbidden to him even after his father dies. The Machon Nesher in Sanhedrin 58a, the Hilchos Yesodei, question, maybe Aviv comes to forbid him in an unnatural fashion. That if will forbid him only because of the fact that it's his friend. In other words, the question was, if it's his father's wife in his lifetime, right? Then what? Obviously, it's forbidden him because it's his father's wife. But I might think then he's only liable when he would not be liable because it says for Dovak he wouldn't be liable if it was unnaturally it was done unnaturally so. The Machon Nesher remains with the question why they don't say that that's a possibility, but he agrees with the case of Mishnah that only and Ben Noach with his by a wife of Ben Noach, if he has a relationship, someone else has a relationship with her, and unnaturally so, he's not liable. The Hilchos Yesodei says, since they use the forbiddenness of the wife of their father even after the father died, it means that in lifetime he would not be liable in an unnatural fashion. And he continues to question, how do we know Ben Noach is liable when it's not a natural fashion by other forbiddennesses besides the wife of his friend? Because by Yisrael you're liable, because we learn it from what it says, Mishkevei Isha, that there's more than one way of consorting with a woman. There are two possibilities, which is one is naturally so, one is the unnatural. It's found in Horayos 4a. So make him liable when it's unnaturally so. But with Ben Noach, there's no posuk to tell us that, and why is everyone so quick to say that by his sister and by the other forbidden relationships, Ben Noach is not liable if he does it in an unnatural fashion. Now, ha'ora means that the intimate parts, the private parts, touch each other. Melochim, that comes from Vayikra 20:18, as Mekoira Hera, her source, meaning the source of life which emanates from her uterus. He did contact. That's the beginning of a relationship, but without the completion of the act. The question what penetration has to happen, it usually be liable for this penetration. By penetration and relationship which is not normal, by Ben Noach, the Keren Oira explains the words of the Rambam, the Gezer Mishnah here, and he says that by other forbiddennesses, Ben Noach is liable even when it's not in a natural fashion. And he explains that the whole reason that Israel needs a posuk to forbid in unnaturally so is because by a wife of Israel it says he shall live with her that which is a a way of conceiving a child. And I would say that if it's not natural, it would not be liable. Therefore, it says Mishkevei Isha. That's why we need the added passage that says any type of relationship, even unnatural, is also forbidden. And even if a ben noach would not be liable when it's in unnatural fashion by all forbiddennesses, it can't be that Yisrael should be permitted something that's unnatural, and ben noach will be forbidden. Therefore, we learn from Mishkevei Isha that Yisrael is liable even if it's unnaturally so. Therefore, a goy would be forbidden unnaturally so by other relationships, but he would not be liable of death penalty. Now, if there was only a contact between their private parts, that's considered like not naturally so. Is that the case? This would depend on the text, different texts. In Sanhedrin in 58b, it says Ben noach shebo, that he came upon a woman, his friend's wife, not in a natural fashion. He's not liable. He's not punishable. The Mishnah cites, they say that there's those who have a text that he consorted with her, their private parts touched, but he's not liable because he didn't complete the act. The Mishnah has a text, a goy, that came upon her, not in a natural fashion. It doesn't mention this concept of ha'ora. But the Kesef Mishnah mentions contact, and maybe that was the text of the Rambam. But in Venetia, what's written is Ben noach that came upon his friend's wife in an unnatural fashion. He is not liable. And in the new printings that we do find the text like the Kesef Mishnah, that goyim did not permit that it should be written in the censored Rambams a relationship that's not natural. And therefore, they wrote different languages to make it up, to make up the space, so to explain the empty space you had to fill in. And in the new printings, they tried to go back to the original language that Rambam used. Machon Nesher is of the opinion that the correct text should be that a goy who had a contact relationship with his friend's wife is not liable. And that's a mistake. Because that's only because of the census changes. The Karen Oiro says that contact, we're not clear what would be the law by Ben noach, by non-Jew, even though, according to the text of the Kesef Mishnah, that it says specifically he would not be liable, because contact is similar to not a natural way of doing things. The Karen Oiro adds a Ben noach that had contact or had a full relationship but not naturally so, is forbidden, is not liable, even though it's forbidden, because it says v'dovak. We use the word v'dovak to tell us only a normal relationship is a non-Jew liable for. He disagrees with the Kesef Mishnah. He says a ben noach is only not liable by his friend's wife if it's not normal, but by other forbiddennesses he would be liable. And it would seem more logical that ben noach is not forbidden with contact or non-natural ways, both by his friend's wife and both by other forbidden relationships like his sister, that all of them are learned from the same passage of attaching himself, and not like the Kesef Mishnah. But ultimately, he cites the Yerushalmi in Kedushin that ben noach is forbidden even to have contact of private parts with another woman, with the forbidden relationships. Now, however, if a guy lived with a Jewish wife. There's no difference between normal and natural fashion and unnatural fashion. The simple statement of the Rambam is the intent that he's judged by like a Yisrael, and we say that in an unnatural fashion he's liable for the death penalty, and he would get a death penalty which is only by Jews of choking and not sword. The Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah wants to disagree that if he has a relationship with a betrothed maiden, it's stoning, and if she went into the chuppah, even though she's still a betrothed maiden and the husband has not consummated the marriage, there, if the Ben Noach lives with her, it would drop from stoning, which is the harshest death penalty, to choking, because goyim are not forbidden because they have no kedushin chuppah, as we said, and therefore, if a man just closets himself with a woman, then his friend comes along and lives with her, there is no concept of marriage. But in unnatural fashion, which according to the guest of Mishnah, if a goy lives with his father's wife after his father died, he's liable even if it's unnaturally so, like all the other forbiddennesses except for his friend's wife. Therefore, by a Jewish woman that is liable in an unnatural fashion, that would be like those forbiddennesses that he's forbidden among non-Jewish women, like his father's wife, and therefore he would receive the lowest death penalty, which is of saif, which is of sword. He cites from the Rambam's forbiddennesses of relationships that the Yisrael who has a relationship with a non-Jewish, whether she is a minor of 3 years old in one day, or she's an adult, whether she is unmarried or married, and even if the Jew we're talking about was 9 years in one day, since he had a relationship with her intentionally, she is killed because a Jew was caused to do a sin via her, as we find by Midbar 31:16, that the Benos Midian, the daughters of Midian, were what Bilam caused Jews to sin, and therefore it says in the 17th verse, and any woman who knew a man, even for a mishkav zocher, which is an unnatural relationship, you should kill them, because a Jew was caused to sin because of them. He questions why, when Yisrael has a relationship with a non-Jewish Jewess in an unnatural fashion, you kill her because something happened, because she caused him to sin. When a goy lives on Yisraelis in an unnatural fashion, you don't kill him even though he caused her to sin. You have to say that he has a relationship with a non-Jewish who is unmarried. That is an extension of forbiddenness, because if you would do it publicly, Kanoim zealots have a right to kill him, and therefore that's considered a possible failing, that he was caused to fail through her. But a goy who lived with a Jewess who's unmarried, that's not called a continuation of forbiddenness. We don't find on it anywhere that there's a liability of death. That's a kanoim poigim boy. Masha Engen, which is not the case, a goy who had a relationship with a female woman who is a married woman at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, he would be killed, whether he did it naturally or unnaturally so. Why? Because a takola came through him, that the Jewish woman would be wife was living with somebody she's not supposed to, just like by an animal that we kill the animal. That if a Jewish woman consorted with an animal, according to that, only if the Israelis was willfully so that she is liable for death, then we consider it a takolo. Like the words by Yisrael that had an agoya, willfully so, we kill the woman. If that's the case, a goy that came that raped a Jewish woman and she willfully agreed, he too would be killed. There's no difference whether he had a relationship with her in a natural or an unnatural form. So Hilchos Yesodei says by us at the beginning of the Halacha, he says, the non-Jew is not liable on his friend's wife until he lives with her in a natural fashion. But if he has a relationship with the Israelis, it doesn't matter which way, naturally or unnaturally, he's liable. And the question is, why did he change it? First he called him a Benoach, and at the end he calls him a Goy. And he explains that Benoach includes also those who accepted the 7 mitzvahs B'nai Noach, like those who dwell in Eretz Yisrael, or are permitted to dwell in Eretz Yisrael. And a Goy he's talking about, he didn't accept those 7 mitzvahs. Therefore, when he had a relationship with the Israelis, in a natural fashion, he is killed because he caused her to sin, death penalty. But if they accept the 7 mitzvahs and he is a citizen dweller, he's not killed, as we find in Surah that we don't say Kanoin Poigim Boy Begear Toishov. It's not considered a takolo. Therefore, he always uses the language Ben Noach. He's talking even by a Ger Toishav. And he says Goy, who has a relationship with the Israelis, that it's not a Ger Toishav. He's killed on an unnatural fashion because he brought about a situation where a Jewish woman had a forbidden relationship willfully so. There's another difference. If we say that a Goy is judged according to the laws of Israel or according to the laws of Benoach, we said by a betrothed maiden who was raped, he is stoned. And even if he had a relationship with her after she went into the chuppah, even though she didn't live with her husband, the Goy would have a din of chenek. And the stoning by a betrothed woman, and also when he has lived with her after the chuppah, even though the husband did not live with her, it's bechenek like a dini Yisrael. At the end of the parak in Halacha Yudalad, he says that Benoach is killed with one witness and with one judge, and without warning, and even with relatives. You don't have a concept of witnesses by him. Or Sanhedrin of 23. He's killed with whatever there is, and Yisrael, he's not liable only when there are witnesses that warned him. So the question is here, he's saying that he wouldn't be liable unless the witnesses warned him. There's a question, when a Benoach is killed in the laws of Yisrael, like stoning for living with a betrothed maiden, does it need witnesses and warning or not? Rabbi Akiva Ega cites the Torah's Chaim. He's only with the Sanhedrin and with witnesses and with warning. And the Rambam says Kedini Yisrael, like all the rules would apply to a Jew. But he brings that Rashi and the Ran saying he's stoned. You don't need to have all the 3 above, the Sanhedrin, the witnesses, and the warning. Yeshayahu Sefer, the son of Machon Nesher, in the first in the Yerushalmi, if you'll say that you judge him within the Yisrael, you need 2 witnesses, in Sanhedrin 23, and HaTorah, and Skila. If you'll say that he's judged by Benoach, it's enough, 1 witness, 1 judge, and without warning, and he would be killed with a sword. That the law is stoning, You need all the rules of, like the Teres Chaim says, you need to have all three. The Rambam, who says he's stoned like Yisrael, the Teres Chaim and the Ma'aponim infer that you need all three: Sanhedrin, witnesses, and warning. Shiur Sefer questions, what did the Ma'aponim see in the Rambam more than the Lashon HaGemara? That's enough to judge them according to their rules, which is one witness, one judge, and no warning necessary.